Mark, thank you so much for joining us for the 22nd Happiness Happens Month. So this is Mark Littell, just in case anybody doesn't, the first names, you're not ringing a bell. He is a former Major League Baseball player, and sounds like he's done lots and lots around baseball world. So I'll let him share that as we go through our chit chat. And
Right.
He's also an author, and he's like done coaching, and he's traveled and he speaks. So he's just been everywhere, and he's traveled everywhere. So we got to talk about a lot of his traveling ventures. So thank you for being with us, Mark.
Glad to be here, Pamela, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So our first order of questions today is we're going over the 31 types of happiness so people can really realize how broad of an experience happiness can be when you're looking for it. So This is our way to make happiness a verb, if you will. That was the title of a podcast somebody did after my book came out, and I love it, so I borrowed it. Making happiness as a verb. And so I've asked you to share a time of when you were playful, and you actually shared one about when you were a kid with your brother, but when you were playful and it was also happy, because being playful makes us happy, but we also need to make sure we're playful even when we're adults.
That's a good point. I mean, when you're young, you're trying to spread your wings, and also you have hormones flying all over the place. The other factor is that my brother and I were a year and 16 days apart, and I was the pitcher and he was the catcher. He actually got drafted twice, and he played at Mississippi State. He didn't want to sign because he thought it was a bunch of crap what I did. So he wanted to move on with his life and be happy. And he planned it out well. But growing up on a farm in a rural area of Southeast Missouri, of soybeans and cotton, water moccasins and mosquitoes, and just 80 miles north of Memphis on the opposite side of the Mississippi, was challenging at times. And so we had to find our own fun, and you could get in trouble just as easy. The same thing when you walk the walk and you go out and you think you're an adult at 21, but you're not really. You're kind of still guessing. And of course, when you're 18, you think you know everything. 21, you really know everything. And at 30, you find out that I better take a step backwards and draw everything in. So the interesting part too about the happiness is I always try to, because I think I had a depression thing, everybody has a certain amount of depression, and trying to find happiness when you walk on a daily basis, I think you have to really try to put that smile on. You and I were talking a while ago I was talking about fake it until you make it. And, I can put a smile on, but hey, I'm not really happy on my inner side. But you got to find, quiet time for me. I've really, at my age, especially in the last 10 years, I've tried to find daily a quiet place I could go at the end of the day, and just, be around a tree, birds, just listening. And I think that's another factor we need to do, is we need to listen more to people that we're speaking to. Anybody, they've got something to say. I know when I was a pitching coach, I did this for 18 years. I was with the Dodgers, Milwaukee, San Diego, the Royals, and then I did a lot of amateur stuff as well. And I played 11 years at 8.5 plus in the big leagues. But you're not going to be happy. You yourself are not going to be happy. So you've got to kick yourself in the butt and rise to the occasion. And I told my pitchers one time, I said, listen, there's 10 days. Let's put everything in a 10-day perspective here. I said, 9 of these days, I'm going to be pretty good. But there's that one day out of those 10 days that I'm not going to be good. And I realized the same is going to be for you. I said, so, I'll try to hone it. I'll try to hone everything and pull it back in. But I said, realize that there's going to be those certain days like that. And that's just going to happen. And so you've kind of got to go in your own little area and stay away and get yourself straight so you can work on the other 9 days. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's actually, you probably really won a lot of fans within your team because you recognize they have that same time as well, that they're going to have that same day that's maybe not their great day. So what's a time when you were, let's just take when you were playing baseball. What's a time that you and because you said you traveled, obviously baseball is a traveling sport. It's a big, I have my friend who loves the Red Sox. She actually went on a Red Sox traveling vacation on the West Coast so she could actually see them. I was like, you're taking a vacation to what? She's like, yeah, it's with all the Red Sox fans, and we go up the coast to watch them play. So it's a traveling game. So what's a time when you were traveling that you guys were just, playing around, having fun?
I like to, my whole thing was about food. And so I think, you're going to different towns, and hey, some of my black buddies, they'd say, hey, country, we're taking you over to eat ribs tonight. And I said, do I have to pack? And they said, no, you're covered. In other words, there you go. I said, no, you're covered. So we'd go to someplace in Oakland in an alley, and you'd be eating great ribs. So, it was pretty neat. You're on a flight like that, but everything, I liked the restaurants. I liked coming out of the Midwest, you grew up with pretty good food. And my mom was a really good cook, and she fed us, fortunately we could eat well, and we grew up on a farm. It was soybeans and cotton, but we ate well. And so the restaurant scene was big to me. And I guess the other factor, to not get off the subject with the restaurants, was, you say, what keeps you happy? Well, a win kept me happy when I go on a ball game. Yes, that kept me happy. Now, when I took a loss, I said I'd have to sulk for about, 3 or 4 minutes, and I had to slap myself and say, get back with, being happy again. That didn't always work, though. So.
No, because I'm sure it depended on who the loss was with or what point in the season it was happening. And
right. You've got 162 ball games. You're on a plane. You're in the hotels. You're in a ballpark. You're in a restaurant. And then then the circle goes again. Everybody says, oh, it must be great to go to all these cities. Yeah, well, okay. It's according to the ballpark,
Yeah, I know when I was a road warrior, the first time I went into a city, it was always super exciting. But then it depended on if it was the city that I, really enjoyed. Like if I enjoyed a restaurant, like one of my favorite Thai food restaurants that I have no idea if it's still there is in Scottsdale. So like if I go to that area, I always want to go to, if next time I'm in Arizona, I'll look it up to see if it's still, if that Thai food restaurant's there. Because if it is, I'll go.
I got a question for you. Are you, since you've traveled, I know you have you ever gone into a city and you said, I like this smell or I don't like this smell? Because the senses, it was kind of interesting, because I know I went into Cleveland, and I got off the plane, and I was getting a cab, and I asked the cab driver, I said, this is in one of my books. I said, what's so hot about Cleveland? I was talking tough, and he said, well, we're going over this river right now. And I said, what's so hot? He said, well, it burns. I said, oh, so, and so that was one of the things. Yeah, it catches on fire because they had so much chemical in there. And this was in the 70s. And then, and he said, yeah, and here in this ballpark, it's called Mistake by the Lake. And so we played this old stadium that was 90,000, and they didn't draw anything in Cleveland. And so when you're out in the outfield taking, fly balls, you're thinking, are there going to be any people at this game? And there's like 10,000 people at the game. Looks like there's a bunch of ants out there. So kind of depressing, because you like to play in front of a lot of people usually.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. You asked a good question. You're right. Cities actually do have an aroma when I think about it. You would walk out of the airport door and there is this, you are correct. I have not thought of it that way, but so I learned something. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now I'm going to always think about cities a little bit different. I was always thinking about restaurants, but now I'm going to be thinking about how do they smell? So I know you have a book that came out. I think it came out last year, a new book called, I'm going to make sure I've got the right name so I'm reading it right, which is, What's Up, Ramrod. But I also know you have 2 more books if you have them, if you want to show them. One's about your growing up in the farmland, and one is your big serious baseball book.
Right.
and I'm forgetting the title.
That was my first one. It was on the 8th Day God Made Baseball. The second book was Country Boy Conveniently Wild, and the third one was What's Up Ramrod. The third one's got about 332 pages in it, and it's about 87,000 words. Second book's only got 40,000. People really like that book because it's my character, how I grew up on a farm from early ages, and a lot of the trouble my brother and I got into. And the very first book was on the 8th Day God Made Baseball, which is, since I was a baseball player, I had to write a baseball book, but to a degree. But it's not so. It is about baseball, but it's about character. It's about building. It's about your life, how you move through this whole world, and the mistakes that we all make, and then you're corrected, and then you have to move on, and then you make more mistakes, and then you're corrected again, and we're constantly making mistakes for a little while, and then we kind of tone it down. So to a degree,
that's through the 30s, right? So you get to be 30
exactly.
when you realize,
when you get into 30, you say, well, I think I better knock it back a notch. So
well, the Native American proverb is true wisdom is realizing what you don't know. But like you said, we spend most of our 20s believing we know everything. So and you're probably right about the 30s. It would kind of hit you. So now, what's your last book? What is it focusing on?
It's coaching, even though I have a kangaroo on the front, and I called everybody Ramrod. And so, and people say, well, why did you call him Ramrod? And, my players would say, hey, he called me Ramrod, to a young guy in spring training, there's like 140 in camp. And he said, hey, nice job, Ramrod. He said, he called me Ramrod, and everybody's laughing. They said, well, you know why he called you Ramrod? I said, no, you don't know your name.
That's what a perfect nickname is, right?
So, I don't know names, and their names weren't on the back. So I said, they had a number. I said, hey, nice job, Ramrod. And so everybody would be calling me, hey, Ramrod, what's up? And I said, oh, just trying to get it right like you. I'm putting them in the driver's seat too, because there's no sense from a coaching standpoint, and you don't do that professionally. You don't scare people. I think a lot of people sometimes try to, I'm tough, I'm a coach. Well, when I work with my amateur guys, all my young guys, 10 and up, and all my college guys, I have them call me Mark, like we do professionally. I break the ice, in other words. I don't want you to call me coach. Call me Mark. Let's get down and dirty here.
It's personal. You're making it personal.
Very personal. And these kids talk to me, and they might say things to me that they don't say to their parents. And I might look at them, and probably a lot actually, and they'll say, and I'll notice how they're acting. I'll say, hey, you got a problem today? And they said, no. And I said, yeah, you do. He said, after we get through throwing, come on over the fence, talk to me. He said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, so what's going on? So they open up, and I listen. You have to listen. I was not a good listener, and I've over the years became a good listener, because if you're talking, you're not listening. So I got to listen. I got to ask the right question and get them to open up, and then just sit back and let them go. Same thing with professional ball players. They'll, in the minor leagues, they'll call me, say an A ball. Hey, Country. Well, my nickname's Country too. They'd say, Country. I'd say, yeah, it's at 2:00 in the morning. They say, are you awake? I said, well, I am now. I said, so what's going on? Well, can I talk to you? I said, sure. I said, I'm going to crack the door. The light's going to be off. There's a chair right there when you walk in, obviously. I said, bring me a Coke, open it up, set it down, and start talking. That's simple.
That's great.
So, just keep it light, let them be on your level. And then if I've got something to say, I say, well, that's an interesting way of putting it. I never heard it put that way. Or here's my thought. What do you think about my thought? Here's a suggestion. Because if you tell them something, they're going to back out. That's kind of like if you say, as a hitter or a pitcher, I need to get a hit, or I have to get a hit, or I have to throw a strike. Well, you're basically setting yourself up to fail when you say I have to. A lot of times it's easier to work from a negative to a positive than trying to say, I've got to do this, because you're putting so much pressure on yourself. Just let it go, and then everything will work. You have to get out of the high spirit and work toward the middle versus up, and not too low either. You don't want to work too low. You don't want to work too high. You want to work in that middle, the safety zone right there that best.
We call that content, because that's one of our types of happiness. When you can just be content right there in the middle.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's underrated because people want us to be like, happy high, so to speak, joyful, fun, humor. But sometimes being content is really good, when you're just like content, because obviously if you're playing professional sports, you're going to have some bad pitches or some bad hits or some bad, that's just
bad
part
times.
of the game. Yeah, and it possibly turns into a day. So if you can just stay in that middle zone and not let that freak out your head, you can usually, like you just said, rebound. It'll usually rebound for you, and you can.
I always tell my young kids, I say, listen, this is for their mom and dad, and you have a lot of single moms out there. Mm-hmm. I'm taking over kind of as a father figure, but for the time that I'm with them. But I always tell them, I said, guys, you ought to make your bed in the morning. That way you're doing something positive for the day. You're getting one thing done. And if you don't want to make it, that's fine too, because they might not want to make it because of something going on. But, if you make that bed, there's something positive. And they go, really? And then I put it in my rules sheet. Rule number 1, make your bed. You don't have to, but if it works, they've done something before they went to school or brushed their teeth or saw their parents, or, hey, how you guys doing? And, and then they come in there and mom says, oh, wow, you made your bed. And then the other thing is, I always tell them, sometimes at the end, about every 5th or 6th time out, I always have a 5-minute meeting, not any longer, because you can't capture me after that. But the other factor is saying, hey, one thing I want you to do today, I want you to go up to your mom and say, hey, Mom, you know what? I love you, and give her a kiss and just walk away.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. And I bet your moms love it too. Yeah.
And I said, I mean that. I said, walk up to your mom and say, Mom, look her right in the eye, because I teach them how to handshake. I said, give me a firm grip. Give me one that brings me to my ground. Look me in the eye and say, hey, I'm glad to meet you. Because it's important how you meet people. And a lot of people don't meet people right for the first time. They don't make the eye contact. They don't give the firm handshake. They say, oh, God, this guy's a wimp, and things of that nature. But I think it's important, your mother, she needs that. And, you look her in the eye, and you might put your hand on her shoulder or her arm and say, Mom, I really love you, and give her a kiss and just walk away.
I love that. And I think that's a great place, because you sort of shared your happiness is personal that we're asking a lot of people, that you like that quiet alone time now. So we got that earlier on. So I think that's a great place for us to wrap up our Happiness Happens Month interview, because love is a type of happiness. And I don't know any mom who feels like her son says she loves him too, he loves her too much. So she can just never hear that enough. So I love all your tips about how you sort of make life playful. You kind of take all your situations and make it fun and playful, and you're mentoring so many folks. And kids, I just love that. So thank you for sharing your light. Thank you for sharing your happiness.
Pamela, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the time.
So I have too. So thank you.